Hello everyone, it's Kyra Nankivell. We're going to be talking about the CFAT, specifically section 3 of the test, which is problem solving. This is video 4 out of 4, so if you haven't seen the other 3 videos, go check them out. They'll help you a lot with your exam. Now, problem solving has 30 questions and 30 minutes, so you need to keep yourself on pace, okay? So it's about a question a minute, keep an eye on the clock, and really try and refine your multiplication and your long division skills. So I'm going to show you just a brief tutorial on how to do long division and long multiplication, but I'm going to switch to an iPad view so that you can actually see me work out the problems. So moving to the iPad, we're going to be talking about problem solving. Just to remind you, the CFAT section has 30 questions which must be completed in 30 minutes. But right now I'm going to walk you through 4 questions that were provided to me by armytest.com, and we're going to work through them together. So starting with that, we have long division and long multiplication here. So in long division, there's this nice acronym, that's DMSB, which teaches you the order of operations. So let's just write here. D stands for divide, M stands for multiply, S stands for subtract, and B stands for bring down. Okay? So that's exactly what we're going to do. We're going to set this up. So we're going to have 124 here, 3 here. And our first step is to divide. So we're going to take 3 and look at our first digit here, which is 1. So 1 divided by 3 is not a whole number. Okay? So in other words, 3 does not go evenly into 1. So we're going to put a 0 here. Now the next step would be to multiply 3 times 0, but that just gives us 0. So we're going to skip that step. Next, we're going to divide 12. So we're going to divide 12 by 3. So 12 by 3 is 4. So we're going to put 4 here. Then we're going to move on to step 2, which is multiply 4 times 3, which gives you 12. Right? Now we're going to move on to step 3, which is subtract. So we're going to subtract these. 12 subtract 12 is 0. Awesome. Our next step is to bring down. So we're going to bring down this 4 here. Boom. And we're going to start back at divide. Okay? So starting at divide again, we're going to divide 4 by 3. In other words, how many times can 3 go into 4 evenly? Just once. Therefore, we're going to have a 1 up here. That's a bad one. Just do it like that. Now we're going to repeat, or we're going to move on to step 2, which is multiply. Now we're going to multiply 1 times 3, which gives us 3. Step 3, which is subtract. We're going to subtract 4, subtract 4, subtract 3 is 1. Right? 4 subtract 3 is 1. So that's our remainder. So in other words, I'll write this out for you. Therefore, 124 divided by 3 is equal to 41, which is this number, with remainder of 1. In other words, this is actually equal to 41 times 3 plus 1. Just kidding. Okay, great. Now we're going to move on to long multiplication, doing the reverse of the long division problem we just did. So we're going to do 124 times 41. So, actually, sorry, let's do 41 times 3. Yeah, that should give us 124. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to have 41 here, put 3 down here. And we're going to start by looking at 3 times this number as if there was a 0 here. So in other words, we're going to do 3 times 40. 3 times 40 is 120, right? Okay. Next, we're going to do 3 times the single digit number, which is 1. So we're going to do, we're going to do 3 times 1, which is 3. Now we're going to add these two together. We're going to add these terms. Add. So this is 123. Now comparing these problems to each other, you can see that 41 times 3, so our whole number, times 3, gave us 123. But if we add this remainder of 1, so if we do 123 plus 1, we're going to get 124. Right? And that's what we started with over here. We said 124 divided by 3. So these things are related, of course. But yeah, that's how you do long multiplication and long division. Okay, so moving on to the CFAT questions. This is our first one here. It says, which option continues the series? So this is the series here, and these are the options. We're trying to figure out which one will go here. Okay? So in order to do that, we need to try and figure out the link between each of these boxes in order to figure out the one that will link to the box we need to find. So it may not become apparent at first what is happening here because there's two things happening. We have the dots are moving around, right? And we can also see that the arrows are staying in the same place, but they're changing orientation, right? So they're basically like rotating. But we don't know which way they're rotating or by how much. Okay, so you got two things happening. So let's just try and start with the dots first. So start by looking at dots. And what I mean by that is we're going to try and see if we can make a pattern for how the dots are moving. Okay? So in order to that, we need to see that this first dot starts here, right? And it ends up here. So what happened? It must have got moved up that way. Okay? Now if we go from the second dot here to the third dot here, what happened? Well, it moved to the right. Easy enough. Now we're looking at the third dot, and we're trying to figure out how it got to the fourth dot. It moved up this way to the top left. Now if we're looking at this fourth dot, and we don't know what this next dot is like, we can then look back on what we just discovered, which was this pattern. Look, the arrows are matching the arrows in the boxes. So basically what we've discovered is that the arrow points toward where dot will be or will move in next box. So in other words, this arrow in this box tells us where this dot will be in the second box, right? Now if we look at this box here, we can say that this arrow here is going to tell us where the dot's going to be in the last box. So following the pattern, this arrow is telling the dot to move to the right. So if it moves to the right, it's going to be right in the middle here. That's great. So now we know that our answer is going to have a dot in the middle, but we don't know what this arrow is going to be like, right? And that's okay. Maybe we don't need to know. So let's look over at our options here. So this dot is in the middle, but it's not at the top middle. So this one is incorrect. This dot is clearly not in the middle, so that one's incorrect. And this dot is clearly not in the middle either. That's incorrect. But look, we have a nice option here, option B, which has the dot exactly where we said it would be. Therefore, B is the correct answer. And we didn't need to know the arrow direction or orientation. So that just goes to show that even though two things are changing, you might only need to figure out how one of them changes, right? Now moving on to the second question here. All right, so this one is a ratio question. It says 3 painters take 4 hours to paint a wall. How long will it take 2 painters to paint a wall twice as large? 10 hours, 14 hours, 12 hours, or 8 hours? So I knew it was a ratio question because it's giving us some information here. It says 3 painters take 4 hours to paint a wall. Okay? Then it says, how long, so this is what it wants to know, will it take 2 painters to paint a wall that's twice as large? So it's basically allowing you to set up ratios here and then apply those ratios to figure out how long it will take for 2 painters to paint a wall twice as large. And if what I just said didn't make sense to you, don't worry, I'm going to show you how to do it in a nice, easy chart. So what we can do is we can set it up by saying painters here, the time it will take in hours, and the wall size. Right? So what do we know at the beginning? We know it's going to take 3 painters, so we write 3 here, 4 hours, so this is a 4 here, to paint a wall. So in terms of size, let's just call that like size 1, which we can just say is this. Okay? So an arbitrary size, size 1. Now what do we want to get to? So we want to get to 2 painters twice as large and figure out how long it will take them. So basically, we know that we want 2 painters. We don't know how long it will take, but they're going to be painting a wall that's twice as large. In other words, they're going to be painting a wall that's double that first wall, like this. Okay? So how do we go about doing this? Well, we need to get from 3 to 2, so this has to change. And we need to get from 1 to 2, so this has to change. So let's start with that. Just erase that there. So the first thing we can do is we can reduce the number of painters to 1, just so that we can later multiply that to 2. It's just an easy ratio. So if we divide this by 3, we'll get a 1 here. But because we divided the painters by 3, it's going to take 1 painter 3 times as long as it took 3 painters. Okay? So basically what I'm saying is I'm going to multiply this by 3 to get 12, because 3 painters took 4 hours. Now 1 painter by himself or herself is going to take 3 times as long, which is 12 hours. Okay? If you think about that logically, it should make sense. You know, you have less painters now, so it's going to take more time, right? So 12 is greater than 4, and 3 is less than 1, or 1 is less than 3. And we're going to keep the wall size the same. Next thing we're going to do is we are going to increase the wall size now. All right? So we are going to make the wall to the preferred size, which is twice as big, so 2. And by doing that and keeping only 1 painter on the job, doubling the wall size will double the amount of time it takes them, or takes him/her. So this is going to be 24 now. So it will take 1 painter 24 hours to paint this wall size over here. All right? So what's next? So this is now correct. This is not correct. So we need to change this. We need to change the number of painters. And how do we get to 2? We multiply 1 by 2. So if we multiply 1 by 2, we'll get 2, which is right. And the wall size will stay the same, because this is already right? So it's 2 and 2. But what will that do to the time? Well, if you double the amount of painters, you're going to cut the time in half, right? If you have another person working, you can do twice as much work as the first person. Or you can do it in half the time. So that means that this is 12 hours. So now we know what this question mark is. We know that, therefore, 2 painters will take 12 hours to paint the wall. And that is C, 12 hours. Now, if you get to this point where you've sorted all your numbers out and you get a number that's not in the given answers here, then just go back through your logic and make sure everything makes sense. And you'll probably find a mistake that you can fix, and I'm sure you'll be able to find an answer here. Okay? So let's move on to our next question. This one is kind of like a patterning question. So it says, find the missing number. And it gives you 4 blank. So this is the missing number. 4 blank, 20, 10, 100, 50, 500. And it gives you options of 1, 30, 8, and 2. So I'm just going to rewrite this here. 4 blank, 20, 10, 100, 50, 500. Now, I think the best approach to these kind of questions is to look at the numbers that they've provided you with, so these and this one, and then just try and see these links between the following numbers. So this one is hard to see because we don't know what this is, so we'll skip that. But how do you get from 20 to 10? Well, you can divide by 2, right? 20 divided by 2 is 10. Okay, so we have that. Now, look at this one. How do we get from 10 to 100? Well, one way you can do that is to multiply by 10. Now, notice that these are not the same relationship, and that's okay. Let me write this down. The CFAT has questions with two changes in the same pattern. So what I'm trying to say is, just because you know that this one's divided by 2, doesn't mean this one has to be divided by 2, and this one has to be divided by 2, and this one has to be divided by 2. It just means that the first one that you found is divided by 2. But now that we know that the second one is multiplied by 10, that's okay. You just have 2 different relationships. So what happens in these kind of patterns is you alternate. But let's just keep trying to figure out these last few links. So how do you get from 100 to 50? Well, again, you can just divide by 2. And how do you get from 50 to 500? Well, you can multiply by 10. So you can see here that we have a pattern that is dividing by 2, then multiplying by 10, then dividing by 2, then multiplying by 10, and so on. So knowing that, we know that this relationship, let's change colors here, let's make it more obvious. We're trying to find this number. Now we know this link is going to be multiplied by 10. And we know that this link is going to be divided by 2. So what we can do now is we can say 4 divided by 2 equals 2. Okay, so that's the first link that we saw here. But we can also check. We can say, what times 10 equals 20? Well, if you move this over to the other side, you can say that 20 divided by 10 equals 2. So either way, you get 2 as the answer. So you'd get 2 here. Now check that 2 is an option that you're given. So not 1, not 30, not 8, but boom, 2 right there. So that means that 2 is the correct answer in this case. And now for our last question here. This one says, pentagon, square, rectangle. Which of the words does belong to the list of words above? Namely, this list of words. And it gives you 4 options. A, cylinder, B, circle, C, sphere, or D, cone. Now, what you want to do is you want to kind of write down or visualize the information you know about the words that it gave you. So pentagon, what's a pentagon? Pentagon is this, right? It's got 5 sides. That's what penta means. So that's a pentagon. What's a square? We all know what a square is. Boom. Pretend that these are all equal in length. And a rectangle looks like this, where these two are the same length and the opposite sides are the same length, is what I'm trying to say. So now we can draw, let me switch colors, each of the options out. So what's a cylinder look like? Cylinder looks like this, kind of, right? So that's A. B, what's a circle look like? Well, I can try and draw you a circle. That wasn't too bad. Or I can use this cool function where it makes it to a circle. Boom. And C, sphere, which I'm going to draw like this. Or D, cone, which you can think of your ice cream, which looks like this. So now what we want to do is we want to compare this list to these options. So what can you see right off the bat? You can see that this is a 3D object. This is also a 3D object, and so is this. This is a 2D object. And what is in this pattern, or in this collection? We have 2D objects. Therefore, you want the 2D object out of the options, which is the circle. With all that being said, you can say that B is the correct answer. All right? So again, if you want more practice questions, check out army-test.com/Kyra, and thank you for watching. All right, guys, so that's it for this video. I hope this helps you on your problem solving in the CFAT. If you need more practice with long division or multiplication, check out other YouTube videos, other resources online. If you want more specific CFAT type questions, check out army-test.com. I've talked about it before. There are loads of questions on there where you can get practice, just an arithmetic trainer, etc. Please use my link, which is army-test.com/Kyra, which is Kyra. That will help me a lot, support my channel. I love you guys so much. Thank you in advance. And as a bonus, I will also be offering my own support. So you can direct message me your questions or concerns, any problems that you're stuck on, and I will personally reply, try and figure out the answer for you, and give you all the support that you need. So as always, if you got value, please like this video, comment, and subscribe. Happy holidays.